Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the HomeTech Podcast. Jason Griffin here. So happy to have you with us. I am joined, as always, by my partner, Seth Johnson. Seth, how's it going?
Good, man. What's going on?
Not much. I hear you're enjoying a nice a glass of Riesling in your studio or garage.
Yes, a surprise glass of wine popped out here.
It just popped out.
Yep. I don't know how I got here, but
went in for water, came out with wine.
Yeah, I don't know. There's a scripture about this somewhere, I think.
That's right.
So yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, I'm sure your week. We were listening to some nature sounds just before the show started, just to kind of calm down the week. I'm sure you're getting ready for CEDIA, and I know that we are, and we just kind of need to have something to breathe here at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's busy. Yeah, we thought we'd we figured people joining us for the live show tonight here were probably in the same boat. So we like to have a little bit of fun with our bumper music, and tonight it was relaxing sounds of nature. Chris Gamble called it. It was the English Summer Sounds album.
Sounds like a good one.
It was delightful.
Yeah, it was great. So if you have a chance to make our live shows, we usually record, and I'm going to say this, in the Eastern time zone, we usually record around 6:30 on Wednesdays each week. It's a weekly show, so 6:30 Eastern time. If we have an interview, then it can be as late as around 7:30, 7:30, somewhere in there. But we're happy to have you join us and listen to the bumper music. And
it's always a surprise.
I think everybody else fell asleep. I can see some Z's in here. So it worked, Jason.
Well, it was great. I thought it was nice and relaxing. Got me ready for the show.
Well, we got a pretty good show this week. We've got a little bit of news from Apple. We got a little news from TiVo, Savant, and what was the last thing we were going to do? Oh yeah, Comcast. So lots of stuff going on this week. Even though it's a fairly slow week, but there was a lot of like little stories that kind of just add up. So.
Yeah. It's little bit of a slow news cycle here. We're definitely in that run up to CEDIA, and everybody's I heard Mike Wolf say it once, and I like the saying. They're keeping their powder dry. Everybody's holding back a little bit, and I think we're seeing that here. But within the next 2 weeks or so, I got to imagine we'll be seeing it's going to be fast and furious here on the HomeTech Podcast. So we look forward to that. But I do think we've assembled, like you said, a number of interesting stories here tonight. Just going to be you and me, Seth. No guest this week. So we will jump in momentarily. But before we do that, we want to send a big thank you, as we always do, to the supporters of the show who have taken part in our Patreon program. If you want to learn a little bit about that, you can head over to HomeTech.fm/support. Once again, that's HomeTech.fm/support, and that's where you can learn about a way that you can support our efforts here at the podcast for as little as $1 a month. And even at that $1 a month level, we will send you an invite to our private Slack channel, The Hub, which is a really fun community of enthusiasts and professionals alike, and we really have a good time with that. So once again, just want to send a big thank you out to everybody who's done that. And if you're a new listener to the show and you're interested in supporting our efforts, one last time, that's HomeTech.fm/support.
Absolutely, thank you very much for joining. And I think we had a couple come through last week. I've got to go back and look. It's been, like I said, kind of crazy leading up to CEDIA here. I need to go back and look and make sure I invited everybody. So
yeah,
if you did donate and I haven't sent you a invite, let me know. Yell at me. It's either Twitter or the feedback form. I will get you in.
A known bug in our sophisticated automation system that's known as Seth.
Right. It's not a very good system. Would not recommend this to anybody.
We'll get there.
Yep.
We'll get there someday.
We've got a pretty good pick of the week this week, Jason. This one comes from at UHD4K, the Ultra HD 4K news feed here on Twitter, and I thought this was pretty cool. It's HDR support status of August 2017, and this is what the HDR landscape will look like come August 2017, when Apple supposedly will also join the 4K group of manufacturers that are offering 4K supported devices. So we've got all of these different formats here that are just really confusing. So I guess HDR10, HDR10 Plus, Dolby Vision, and HGL. These are kind of the
HLG.
four main. Oh yeah, HLG. Okay, well that makes
Got to
sense.
get that right, Seth.
Yeah, it must. Okay, so LG is in that group, so maybe that I have no idea what this means.
God only knows.
Yeah, it's stupid computer video people talk. So who cares? The majority of the companies have kind of squared away here in the HDR10 Dolby Vision area.
Yep.
And there was a little bit of leaked code. I think we talked about this last week. That there was leaked code from the HomeKit. There was leaked code from the HomePod side of things, which people started to dig through. And I think in the same interesting code leak, they found some code for the Apple TV, that the Apple TV was going to get HDR and Dolby, the Dolby, what is it? The HDR and Dolby Vision. So interesting that we're going to see this happen, like that everything is kind of like falling into place here. It looks like the HDL, Panasonic, JVC companies that aren't supporting Dolby Vision. Samsung is not, but I think they said they were going to later on in the year. What this gets us is streaming video formats and streaming video devices that are supporting kind of like the same kind of HDR standard. I mean, we can't just have one standard. We've got to have many standards, and
more is better.
God, I mean, this is like one of the, we should do a whole show on this. Really, I mean, this could be a whole show. Having all these video standards that are out there right now that are just like random things that this one can do this one just a little bit better. I like how this one here is HDR 10 plus. Because the plus means it's different than HDR10. Like that's not going to be confusing.
It means it's way better.
It's better. Like, remember XP, Windows XP? Like then every other product out there had to have an X on it, like extreme. Like that was the 90s thing, right? Everything had to be extreme with the big X in front of it. So yeah, I think this is nice to see all of these companies like kind of crowding around one more than one standard. Like I don't think there's a company on here that is supporting less than one standard. So hats off to them to kind of all like come together and support. Looks like HDR and Dolby Vision are kind of winning out. And we'll have to go in depth into what these actually mean. Maybe we'll get somebody on who's a 4K expert and get them to come on and talk about it.
Yeah, somebody who can actually parse through that a little bit. But yeah, it's an interesting graphic. I had to Google this. It was bugging me while you were talking. A Venn diagram. I could not remember the word for that.
Venn diagram.
It's got kind of the overlapping circles, and it shows you where all the brands sit in terms of their support. So go check that out. HomeTech.fm/174 is where you will find the show notes for this week. And I think this is you found another good one here, Seth. Let's transition right into our next story because you alluded to it there, and it does show Apple on this chart or on this Venn diagram, and some astute listeners may have heard that and said, "Well, Apple 4K, like they don't do 4K." Well, we've been hearing a lot of murmurs about a 4K Apple TV for a while now, and then Seth, like you alluded to last week, we discussed there was some leaked HomePod firmware that we last week talked about a number of other things more specific to the HomePod and third-party app integrations and things like that. So if you're interested, go back and check that out. Last week, though, we did allude also to an interesting story where a gentleman had spotted like some 4K and HDR symbols in his iTunes library next to like previously purchased movies. So we're starting to see all of these little threads coming together and little hints about 4K and support for 4K and HDR from Apple. Well, as it turns out, that HomePod firmware that I just alluded to was picked apart a little bit more this week, and indeed there are more hints. Pretty much, I would almost call it a smoking gun evidence in there that 4K is coming to the Apple TV. This is a developer. And Seth, here we go again. Like somehow I always end up with the names. I don't know how this happens, but I'll give it a try. Guilherme Rambo.
Now you could just say Mr. Rambo,
Mr.
Developer Rambo.
Mr. Rambo. I like that much better. Developer Rambo sifted through the HomePod firmware and discovered references to both 4K and HDR. Looks like fairly broad HDR support, according to this report here that we got from Engadget. Mentioned support for Dolby Vision HDR10. And here you go, Seth. Hybrid Log Gamma. That's the HLG. Oh. So there you have it. Learned something new today. So anyways, looks like some fairly broad HDR support in 4K appear to be coming. There seems to be little doubt at this point. It's just a matter of when, not so much if anymore. So that's exciting.
Yeah, because I mean, we've all had the marketing, like everybody wanted 4K, right? Everybody wanted these 4K TVs, but really the 4K doesn't matter. Like you don't need more pixels on your TV unless you have some giant TV or you're sitting incredibly close to your TV. And even then, like a 1080p TV is good enough. But HDR really makes a difference. That's where we're going to see really vibrant colors popping. That's where you see, really dark blacks and really bright whites. So I'm really excited to see all of these companies that are listed on that little Venn diagram that we had, all of them supporting that, and really excited to see that Apple is finally moving in and supporting it on what will probably be the new Apple TV. So very exciting. We're going to get some really good video out of this. I wonder what TV company. I mean, I'm sure they're going to come out with some new crazy thing like who knows, 8K, 16K, or whatever. But I really wonder what the next thing is for TV. Because once we get HDR and 4K in place, man, these pictures are going to look night and day different. I really wonder what the next thing they're going to do is going to be.
Yeah, well, like you said, 8K, 16K, 32K, God only knows.
Yeah,
it's a lot of.
It's got to be a bigger number.
A lot of Ks. A lot of pixels. I'm sure they'll come up with something. I have no doubt. But you're right. I think HDR is a really exciting technology personally, and to me, even more impactful to the picture quality than 4K, arguably, depending a little bit on the size of your TV. Like the bigger the TV, the more important 4K. Those extra pixels do become more important on the larger sets. But HDR is one of those technologies that can have a really dramatic impact on your viewing experience, even if you're talking about a 50 or 55 inch TV. So broader support for that to me is a big deal for everyone, especially though if you're a movie fan or just generally into a good viewing experience. It's great news. So speaking of 4K, another story we wanted to touch on, reported here by who else but Dave Zatz. We got a TiVo story here. It looks like the TiVo Mini 4K, Dave is predicting will hit this fall. Now, I have to admit, I don't follow TiVo all of that closely, but it sounds like this is a fairly significant product development, and Dave Zatz sounded pretty enthusiastic about it. Says he anticipates, quote, Bolt class processing power. Bolt, of course, being a line of TiVo boxes that has some horsepower to it, apparently. So meaning it'll be, he calls it a snappy and usable app platform, talks about the benefits of possibly being able to run apps on there, such as Hulu, Amazon Prime, Netflix, and have that really be, he calls it input one. We on this show, Seth, have often referred to it as input zero, which is really that main input, that default that you turn your TV onto. For most people, that is the DirecTV box or the cable box. And so he talks about that and how that'd be great, for a TiVo user, as opposed to having to flip over to a Roku or Fire TV for those streaming services. So again, he's anticipating that'll come out this fall.
This is very cool. I mean, it's interesting to see TiVo pivot this way, I guess is the best way I can say this. I mean, TiVo is famous for making, hands down, the best cable boxes. I'm trying to think of how many I've had over the years.
Yeah,
probably
you're
like
a big fan of them.
I have 4 boxes right now sitting in my house that I just can't seem to part with. I've got 2 of the premieres and 2 older of the TiVo HDs. I used to have plenty of the other ones all the way back before then. And then I started off with Replay TV before they went out of business. So, but TiVo hands down was the better interface as far as sitting down and actually watching TV, watching cable TV they had it nailed. And it's interesting to see what they're going to do. I mean, we know that TV, TV viewership is declining. Cable company subscriptions are declining. People are stepping away from the expensive cable bill in order to take advantage of maybe a couple of streaming services and watch less TV. So it's interesting to see. I was always curious as to what TiVo was going to do, since they owned that custom high-end TiVo box. Here, it's a generic word now. High-end cable box. I think it's very interesting to see what they do moving forward, and moving in with this little 4K mini box, which is essentially kind of just what we talked about, like the Apple TV that we just talked about. But it has the ability to connect to maybe a bigger TiVo unit and watch cable channels off of it and still take advantage of the TiVo service. It essentially is just a 4K streaming box like all the other ones out there. So will be interesting to see what else these guys come out with. I'm glad they're announcing this now, because we should be able to see them at Cedia. Like they've been there most every year. So I'm hoping. I was just looking at the floor plan today, and I'm kind of hesitating because I didn't see them, but I was literally just kind of glossing over the booths that were there. And yeah, I'm hoping that we get to see this box at Cedia and get to take a look, maybe have some hands-on, see what they've done with it. So exciting. I'm really glad for them. I hope they can stay relevant in this changing market, because they really do. TiVo, you can tell, is a company that is full of people that like to watch TV, and I really like to see them improve and expand upon what they've already done. Even
right.
if cable services are declining and go away, I really hope TiVo stays around.
Yeah, I did a couple of quick searches here on the Cedia 2017 site and was not able to find them. So this time doesn't look like they're going to be there. At least like I said, very quick search. So
I wonder if they're under Rovi this year, because they were purchased by Rovi.
That's true. Yeah,
who knows?
I didn't do that search, but in any event, yeah, I agree. They're they're a company that definitely appears to be full of people who really enjoy the viewing experience, and I know that everybody, pretty much across the board, who I know that's used them before, speaks very, very highly of them. So I'm happy to see them continuing to innovate. But let's move on here. A couple of stories, kind of shifting back to Apple here momentarily. It looks like MyQ from Chamberlain has launched their HomeKit compatible MyQ Homebridge garage door opener. Now, I know you had a note here in our show notes, and I believe you added this one, Seth. I think that this was editorial in parentheses. Finally.
Yes, that was me. The reason for that is Chamberlain is pretty notorious. They were, I guess, not notorious, but infamous. They were one of the launch partners with Apple HomeKit. So, like, if you go back and look, like 3 years ago, at the WWDC that we were watching and HomeKit right. launched, Chamberlain was up there. It was one of like the 4 or 5 people that were like Phillips Hue were up there. Chamberlain was written on there, and they've been on each year. They've had that logo on subsequent slides, like the same slide. Chamberlain's always been there,
hanging around.
There's never been a product. We've never seen a product. So finally, they come out with the MyQ Homebridge, which is, I don't know. I kind of want to call it a hub, but maybe not. I don't know. Because
half ring.
Yeah, it kind of like talks to the garage door openers, but it also does the MyQ lights, like if they have those too. So I don't know. It's just finally here, and I know a lot of people were waiting around for this device. And Chamberlain's finally shipping it. So for $49, if you have the LiftMaster MyQ type garage door, you'll be able to add this device on for $50 and receive real-time alerts about the status of your garage door and lights and that kind of thing. So very cool. And finally, hats off to Chamberlain for getting this product out. Got to thank Adam Justice there in the Slack channel for making us aware of that one at the late hour here, right before we started recording the show. So
yeah, very nice.
Yep, thanks,
very
Adam.
Nice. Well, better late than never, I guess, on two fronts there, right? On Chamberlain's and on Adam getting us the story. We appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think garage door openers are one of those things. I can tell you that in my very recent history as a installer and integrator, it was a frequent request by homeowners that was like, can my fancy home automation system control my garage? And it was one of those, pain points I felt like that came up with it. We never had a great solution for. There were, of course, ways that you could do it with, GPIOs, and it just got complicated, and always felt like there should be an easier way to do that. The programming wasn't really there. And I know that, like at the Savant Dealer Conference that I went to last year, they announced that, and it was kind of like everyone in the room was like, thank God, finally.
Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah.
Garage door support. So it's one of those areas where, I think fresh eyes from the sort of startup community and companies that have been around for a while but are just looking at the smart home and connectivity for the first time saw this and said, well, yeah, this is a no-brainer, where it was one of those things that on the quote-unquote traditional connected home side, we just frankly didn't have a lot of great options for quite a while. So,
well, and quite frankly, we still don't for the MyQ line. Like those are these garage door openers are infamous about not being compatible with contact closures, GPIO closures. Like,
yep,
you can't short the lines out like a regular garage door. They don't work that way. They work off radio frequencies. So a lot of times guys are buying an extra garage door opener push button thing, popping off the button and soldering wires onto the contact points just so they can get the fancy home automation, Crestron Control 4, whatever system to open and close the garage door. That's all. That's the only option we have. So we still don't have a great solution for these LiftMasters, although HomeKit now has a good solution for it. So yeah, unbelievable is right. It's a rough world we live in as integrators.
It is. We're blazing a new trail often, and that's it can be a tough and thankless job, but generally speaking, we're all pretty passionate about making stuff work, and that's what keeps us going. But anyways, Seth, another story here on HomeKit that you actually linked to from The Verge. Not a hard news story here, more of an opinion, sort of editorial piece about HomeKit proving this author wrong, and this is actually by the internet of, I won't say it, or I don't know if you want to bleep it out in post, but
the internet of poo.
The internet of poo. That's right. That was the term we decided to standardize on. So the internet of poo, I guess, guest appearance here on The Verge. Do they usually appear on The Verge? I thought they had like their own.
They do have their own Twitter account that they kind of mercilessly retweet all the things that have gone wrong with the Internet of Things recently.
But troll everyone. And
recently, whoever's behind this, the anonymous author that is behind this, has been writing on The Verge and various other tech blogs because they're actually a pretty decent writer and seem to have a passion for this, even though they make fun of many of the Internet
just
of
about
Things
everything.
devices. Yep.
Well, yeah, looks like in their opinion, HomeKit has turned a corner a little bit. A lot of this piece centers around, the fact that when HomeKit came out, and I think still to a certain extent is a little bit tough for device manufacturers to integrate with. A lot of that goes back to the hardware requirements and the special chips that were required of hardware makers. Now, the article talks a lot about how that has since been relaxed a little bit. Like back at the most recent WWDC, they announced some software authentication, and we talked about that numerous times, and it seems like a good deal, although I'm still a little bit unclear. In fact, I'll try to pull up the email. I know we had an email months ago from a listener who was writing in and heard us talking about that and was saying, well, no, it's not quite what it seems on the surface, and there are still some limitations to it, and I have to admit I don't fully grasp what those are, but ultimately I do think that Apple has tried to relax some of those restrictions and tried to open it up a little bit to make it a little easier for device makers to enter the ecosystem. And that's a lot of what this article centers on is I think the sort of the growth of the ecosystem that's somewhat resulting from that.
Right. I think what that email was about was that when Apple, I think there was a lot of excitement around Apple opening up the software authentication part of this, and also opening up the ability for developers to utilize that But still, if you ship a product like this Chamberlain MyQ thing, which really doesn't apply because it's a hardware piece that has a hardware chip in it. But if you ship a product that uses the software authentication, you still have to go through the Apple certification process, and that's really kind of been the pinch point for a lot of these devices. Personally, I think all of the exposed like internet of everything that this guy or girl has covered on their Internet of Pooh Twitter account, and made fun of, like, it's all security related stuff. And Apple has done, like, they started off with a super lockdown system, whether it was onboarding devices or integrating with those devices, like, it's super locked down. And they slowly have been kind of taking that back and filling in the holes where they needed to be filled in. And they can do that. But no one else can, because everybody else has started off from a position of, integrate with our system, let us, you do whatever you want. And that's where you have, hacks and stuff generated from. Like, people will find those holes in those codes. So I think, personally, I think Apple has done the better of all these. I don't know, it's better. They've done a great job with what they've done. And got to remember, like, HomeKit isn't that old. Like, it's what? We were trying to figure this out before the show. I think it was like 2 or 3 years. I think 2 or 3 years old. Out of the gate, I mean, it was a slow launch. Everybody expected, like, 3 months later, after they surprised everybody announcing this thing, for them to be like shipping, 50 manufacturers to be shipping products by the end of the year. That never happened, because everybody was surprised by it. It didn't have all the features that everybody needed. And by the second year, a couple more products roll out. Third year, a couple more products roll out. So and finally here we have a Chamberlain finally rolling out a product. So I think that they've done like a really good slow burn launch on this thing. It's not been as fast as people like you and I have probably wanted, but I think for security, especially around security, I think they've nailed it. Like, there's not another system I know of that has that can claim to be as secure as these Apple devices. I mean, I guess Z-Wave and Zigbee to some extent, but they're not we're not talking about this. I guess we are talking about the same devices, but we're not talking about the same setup or anything like that. Like, Apple has really been able to control the process from start to finish, and it's really showing. It really does show when you set up one of these devices. Yeah.
So while you were talking, I dug up the email, and this is from back in June. So just following WWDC, and it came from Peter Davidson. Nickname here, I love this. Peter, a happy Swede addicted to home automation. And Peter wrote in and said, HomeKit software authentication maybe not as good as many had hoped. And so I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here. I won't read the whole email, but he's an Indigo user, and if you're not familiar, Indigo is a DIY home automation system, really geared at, I think it's safe to say, people who like to tweak and sort of hard, prosumers.
Yeah, and it's Mac based. I mean, let's see that it's
Mac
a Mac application. Yep. Yeah,
and so he says, well, Indigo users were very excited to hear about this software authentication, and then he posts from a copy and paste here from a post on the Indigo forums, and it says, presumably this is somebody from Indigo writing this, and he says, after the HomeKit announcement, we contacted Apple regarding the ability for Indigo to bridge Indigo devices to HomeKit. Here is the reply. MFI and HomeKit remains a hardware accessory program, and software authentication is merely an alternative to existing hardware authentication that's presently required within a HomeKit-enabled hardware accessory. Software authentication does not expand HomeKit beyond the hardware accessory realm. So Peter closes out the email by saying, so while the obstacles for Indigo to become a software bridge have been removed, Apple's licensing program will still keep us from building HomeKit into Indigo.
Yeah, so they're trying to use it as a bridge, like, into other devices, because Indigo will communicate with Z-Wave devices. It'll communicate with Zigbee devices. And they've got a ton of plugins. It communicates with Nest. And so what they're saying is that we're not going to entertain the idea, and I don't think Apple has ever done this, of having a bridge that converts HomeKit into other device protocols. I think that was a hard line that they drew before this announcement, and I think it's just they're sticking to their guns on it. And Maybe one day they'll do it. I don't know, but there's enough here on the security side of things to say, no, Apple, maybe you shouldn't do that. Maybe you shouldn't support that. And let's keep things secure end to end. And they can really live on that for a long time.
Got it. That makes sense. I struggled to wrap my brain around that a little bit, but I get it. So Indigo is communicating with, potentially dozens or more of different devices throughout your house. And so bridging HomeKit to be able to talk to your Z-Wave light switch through Indigo is a different paradigm. That's where you're talking. It's a bridge, not an accessory realm. So, okay, I get the difference there. But anyways, a little bit of a tangent, but we actually never got a chance to read that email from Peter online. And when I saw this story this week, it reminded me of it. So
Perfect timing.
Yep.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, I wanted to dig that one. Hopefully Peter's listening, and I knew we'd get to it eventually. So there you go. But go read this piece. I think it's interesting. HomeKit's been like you said, a slow burn, right? And I think there is a lot of merit to that approach, Seth. And I know that you've been very consistent in your opinion about HomeKit. There was a sort of a legendary showdown on our Technology.fm fireside chat a couple of years ago between you and Richard that we joke about often anytime we get Richard on the show. And I think, like I said, you've been consistent. HomeKit's, I agree, it's a good vision. It's taking them a little bit of time to execute, but it's really starting to round out and become a very viable option for for anyone who's looking for a sort of a DIY solution. So go check that article out. Again, HomeTech.fm/174 is where you will find the show notes for this week. Shifting gears here a little bit, a story from Amazon. Now, this one, I got to preface a little bit. I didn't do any digging to try and verify this, and the report came from a German tech site called Cashy's blog, which I'm totally unfamiliar with. So I don't know exactly how reputable they are or how much merit there is to this story. But it does say Amazon is planning to add multi-room audio to Echo speakers. According to this report, it says you'll be able to put your Echo speakers into groups. And so, for example, instead of sending audio to every Echo in your home, you could customize groups like outdoor or dinner party or something like that. So interesting. Will be Engadget basically picked up the story and re-reported it. So it is coming from a couple of sources, but again, I just don't know how much merit there is to it, or what the timeline looks like or anything like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because the last couple of Amazon rumors that we've had like this have actually come true. Like we were talking, I think again maybe last week or the week before, about the now shipping ability to use I think it's like voice commands to launch movies on the Fire TVs through the Alexa platform. That was a rumor that I think we discussed a couple weeks before, maybe a month before. It just barely sits on the end of your mind, and you're thinking about it, and you run across, oh, this is now shipping now. I know I've heard about this, and I think maybe in another month we'll see. We may see this. I think certainly this is a feature that people have been asking for and wanting as part of the Echo line, like to be able to play horrible sounding music on different devices throughout the house. I think that's something people have definitely wanted. So, and you're going to see Apple come out with that feature right out of the box with their super expensive HomePod later this year. So I think Amazon's just going to have to step it up and introduce these features as best they can. So I'll be excited when this happens, because it's kind of like it's kind of a super low cost Sonos, right? Like this would be very, very low cost potentially, because you're talking like $50 for the Echo Dots. Like those are not expensive at all. I think the original Echo, you said you just picked yours up for what, half off? So what?
Yeah.
$100?
So they're $180 typically, but yeah, we got ours for $90.
Yeah. So these could be like, I don't want to say a poor man's Sonos, like an everyday man's Sonos, because Sonos does get expensive. It can get very expensive if you start adding those devices in. I think I'm on like the once every 2 years plan with Sonos, and I save up enough money and buy one. But I think this could be a winner for people in smaller rooms and smaller locations that maybe don't care too much about how it sounds. They just want music to play in the area they're in, and they can yell at the little tubes and say, "Play me this music," and it'll start playing, and they can bridge it out and play in other rooms. I think this would be great for them.
Yeah, in fact, I will. While you were talking there, I remembered a story that I'll throw up on our board here so we can get it on the show notes. A company called Anker, Anker, which I had not heard of before. Actually, story on The Verge here as well, has a new product out that similar sort of size and form factor to the Echo Dot. It's got Alexa built in, and it sells for $35. So,
wow,
the price points on these things are just getting crazy. It really is mind-boggling when you think about it. So again, I'll throw that up there. But yeah, if they could get that, functionality built in on a software, on the software level, and these other even accessory companies that are coming out and putting devices on the market that are even cheaper than the Echo, you could be looking at an insanely cheap solution for multi-room audio. So it's interesting to think about. Speaking of Amazon, I saw some dialogue on the Hub, which we mentioned earlier, is our private Slack channel. Today, an image that you posted about Amazon's booth at CEDIA, and looked fairly large. And in fact, Joey Kolchinski, my colleague, reported that they even have a second booth. So the one you pointed to was booth 800, and it looks like 3235 is one that's even bigger, and so they both look pretty sizable. I have not gone and looked at the show floor map yet to get a sense for these, but I know the image you posted is them right next to Epson, and Epson traditionally has a very large booth there, and it looks to be about the same size as that. So it looks like Amazon's going to have a pretty big presence at CEDIA this year. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I never had a chance to go back and look at the 3235 booth. 800 is, by my best guesstimate, just by eyeballing it right here, probably a 30 or 40 by 20 or 30. I mean, it's a decent sized booth. It's by no means small. It's not one of those, set up, square things that people get with the one table and a little curtain backdrop. I remember it was last year Amazon brought the little Echo listening room, which we dubbed something really funny at CEDIA. It was kind of a smelly
fart
room.
Chamber.
Fart chamber. That's what it was. Yeah. So I suspect they'll have that back. Maybe they need to have a bigger room this time with ventilation fans or something. Like
they learned their lesson.
Yeah. I don't. But I'm wondering what the two booths are going to be. Are they going to have two chambers set up, or are they going to have one chamber and then maybe all of their other devices that integrate with the Amazon Echo platform, or are they going to be showing off home services or trying to get dealers to sign up as, Amazon home services people? I don't know, man. This is very interesting to have two massive booths like this. And my comment there in the Slack channel is Amazon is now the new Crestron. Like this is the size booth that we would normally see from a massive CEDIA company like Crestron or Control 4. And while Control 4 does have a sizable booth space, as well as the two other, like they have Pack Edge and they have, Triad speakers this year. Like those are all Control 4 properties scattered throughout the CEDIA floor plan. I don't think anybody has had like the massive amount of Crestron space, and Amazon's certainly coming close to it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I actually pulled back up here for a second time the CEDIA exhibitor list and did a search, and indeed verified that it does list two booths for them, so 3235 and 800. Looked at both of them. Product categories are listed as smart home on both. Same URL, so it's not like one URL goes to maybe their home services company or something, or division or something like that. So yeah, that's really interesting. I could only speculate why they would have two, and I'll be very anxious to see what that's all about. So really interesting.
Yeah. That 3235 booth is double the size of the other one. I mean, that's a massive booth size. So
it's crazy.
Not as big as like Sound AV or Snap AV or Control 4 or anything like that, but it's still a very decent sized booth. And I don't know. I mean, it's very interesting to see both of those locations set up here on the CEDIA floor. I can't wait to go to the show and see what's going on. And speaking of the show, we have to talk about, I had to plug this in at the beginning because we forgot about it last week, but I've got to talk about this this week during the show. If you're going to CEDIA and you want to meet up with us, there's some big names going to this. Go over to HomeTech.fm/happy hour and let us know if you can come to the happy hour. One, we're doing it on Wednesday or Thursday. We really don't know yet because we just want to pick the best day for people.
Yep.
But let us know if you can come to the happy hour, and that way we have a count and we can kind of figure out a venue and a place to go. And then we'll, of course, announce it here on the show and then email blast everybody to show up. So hopefully check that out, HomeTech.fm/happy hour, and sign up. Let us know if you're coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Good call. We
keep forgetting about that.
Forgot to. I know, we're so good at self-promotion.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shifting gears here, Savant, speaking of CEDIA mainstays, acquired Artisan speakers this week. And, not a ton of angles to this story. I think it's a pretty self-explanatory kind of deal why they would do it, and rounding out their product offering and trying to be a one-stop shop. And these are common themes that we've talked about with Control 4, especially, like you mentioned, their recent purchase of Triad speakers. I think it's a little bit of a hedge for a company like Savant, and I say that in a good way, that, to have a broader ecosystem of products and not be exclusively focused on just selling Control. Of course, that is a core a product for them, but distributed audio, speakers, there's a lot of different ways they could go with their product offering. So the deals are the inner workings of the deal, the dollar amount, none of that was revealed. It does look like all Artisan employees will stay on and join Savant. They have a office, I guess, or factory in Minden, Nevada, near Lake Tahoe, apparently. And that location will be maintained as sort of the West Coast audio engineering group for Savant. So good news for Artisan employees there. And like I said, I don't know that there's a ton really to say about this story other than I suppose it makes sense, assuming that Savant got a decent deal. To have speakers in their lineup is certainly not a bad thing.
I think you look no further than the Control 4 stock price to prove that this is a good idea. This thing, Control 4 stock, has been as low as like $6 or $7. They've been on a buying spree, and I think they've been up as high as, they've been close to $24. Now they're at $23, $27. So Wall Street definitely likes this, and Savant, it seems by looking at Control 4's numbers that these acquisitions of Pack Edge and of the Triad, which is another speaker company, have been really good for them. So I think that other manufacturers are taking note of that and looking for things to buy into and purchase. And it looks like Savant is kind of one of the latest that's going to do that. And I don't want to say it's like a Me Too purchase. I have no idea what the details were, or how profitable these companies are. But I can tell you, dealers love it. Like, dealers love having access to an exclusive line within, having one place to go to buy like their control system, the amplifiers, and the speakers that go in the ceiling. Like, that's a great setup, great position to be in for Savant at this point. So I think it'll be a good deal at the end of the day. I think that the Savant dealers will embrace it, and so will Savant, and both will make out really well on it. I think, especially looking at the numbers that Control 4 has been posting over the last couple of months. Yeah.
The one thing I actually saw in a comment in one of the CE Pro articles I read is that, I guess Artisan has a fairly limited lineup. I'm not super familiar with Artisan myself. I've never really used them extensively, but I'm just sort of looking at their website, and it does appear to be pretty focused on like surround sound, sound bars. They got some mezzanine surrounds, which do go in the ceiling. Looks like some big in-wall LCRs. So not really a hugely rounded line of speaker products like company like a Sonance or Origin or one of these other companies that comes to mind. So who knows what there is to that, but it was pointed out in the CE Pro article, and I thought that was kind of an interesting point why they wouldn't potentially go after a company that had a bigger a bigger array of products. But who knows? Like you said, without knowing any of the deal, like what they paid for them or how the deal came about, impossible to speculate on that. And like I said, overall, it seems like a no-brainer for Savant. And generally speaking, I can't see any reason why this would be bad news for anyone who's a Savant dealer.
Nope, not at all. I think dealers make out well, and I think both manufacturers in this case will make out well, like by expanding their customer base. So should be interesting to see how it plays out, and I'm sure it'll be all right.
Yep. So shifting gears again here, a different type of story. Comcast, their new, relatively new, I should say, XFi Wi-Fi system revealed some new features this week that I think are fairly compelling for a certain segment of the market, and I think indicative of features that we're going to continue to see more and more of, and they're going to become kind of ubiquitous in the Wi-Fi space. And these are things like enhanced parental controls. So they had parental controls, as I understand it, when they came out of the gate, but they've now developed something called a timed pause, which lets users disable Wi-Fi networks for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, or indefinite periods. So let's see, who was this here? The Eric Schaefer, Senior VP, General Manager of Communications, says, "We think it will be a convenient option for parents who want to get their kids to go outside and play." Might work.
It's the parental control button. Yeah.
Yeah. Get out of my house. Go do something physical.
You know what's funny is I was talking to a friend of mine. He kind of owns a company here in town that does AV. So he does what we do. He does like home automation, that kind of thing. And he was saying that his kids, sit around and watch YouTube all day. And so he finally got around to setting one of these features up on whatever device he's using. And his kids come to him and like, "Daddy, I want to watch TV. There's nothing on TV." And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "I want to watch YouTube." And they're like, "No, go outside or go watch TV." He's like, "There's nothing on TV. I want to watch TV." Like the kids think that YouTube is TV, and since it's not working, there's nothing on.
Yeah.
So very, very interesting. I think these features are going to be or are super popular or will be super popular with parents.
I agree.
More so than I think we give them credit for as integrators. Like I think that these type of controls should be easily built into integrator-friendly networking systems. I'm looking at UPackage, Luxel. Like I really think that these are the type of features that really, really, really need we need to be able to automate them as easy or as well as what they're doing with these Comcast systems. So calling them out. We need to get these parent-friendly features into our routers as well.
Yeah. I just looked. Luxel does have some of that. I don't know if it's in their entire product line or just in certain routers, but I do know that they've at least dabbled in parental controls. I don't know the details of the implementation, but I agree with you. I think we're going to see more and more of this, and I think as you have a whole generation of kids growing up, like you said, who don't think of TV the way that we do, and they think of it as their iPad. This becomes a very convenient way to sort of set some limits and put some control on it. Now, if you're like Greg Scott in the chat room, he says you just take the damn iPad away from the kid and call it good.
Oh man!
So there's some merit to that. Do it the old-fashioned way. I get that, but this will be a good feature for anyone who has that system. And like I said, I think these sort of things will continue to get more popular. Let's move on here. Last story of the week that we're going to touch on. We mentioned last week that I believe it was last week the ongoing saga of Wink, the home automation hub, purchased by an unexpected source. Will.i.am, his company, I believe IM Plus is the name of the company there, purchased them very recently. Doesn't appear to be a direct correlation between the recent acquisition and this news that we're going to talk about. This was probably starting to take place long before that. But FCC filings, this is from CE Pro, reveal that Wink Labs, the home automation developer, is planning to make its own Z-Wave security peripherals for the first time. They have sort of dabbled in these sort of things before, but they've always handed that business off to like third-party IoT device makers. So it looks like they're going to be bringing that in-house and it's hard to say what that means about their strategy, and if maybe they're going to shift a little bit more to some sort of security offering. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think we left with this last week. It'll be interesting to see where Wink ends up, and maybe the acquisition by I.M. Oh wait, I guess that's pronounced IM Plus is the name of the company. I just read that here in the article. So it's I.M Plus, but you could pronounce it IM Plus.
Confused yet?
Yeah, well, here we are. It could be like HDR 10 Plus or whatever, but here we are, IM Plus. The acquisition last week, I think we left it with, it'll be great to see where this ends up. Hopefully in 5 more years, we're still talking about Wink. We're still talking about them developing the platform. We're still talking about them, supporting more and more devices, and in this case, making devices. I think this is good for them. I think we're seeing other companies out there make their own devices as well and starting to introduce them. So this points to me. This points as being like Wink is a little more healthier than we thought. It seemed like it was on a death watch there. The IM Plus company has purchased them, but that this was all clearly happening before that that went down.
Right.
Those acquisitions can happen relatively quickly, but I'm betting that these hardware developments probably started off 18, 20 months ago, and we're now just getting the FCC filings on them. This was on the drawing board long ago, maybe about the time that they were going into that bankruptcy. They probably came out of that purchase, I think, by Flextronics, if I'm not mistaken. And they probably said, okay, we've got a clean whiteboard in front of us. Let's figure out what we need to do. And that's where these products came from. So I'm glad to see them continuing to be in the news cycle. Like it's good to have them around still. I think it's a decent product line, a decent little hub to use. And I think was going to be like one of our picks for a while. Like I think Richard, myself, and you, we were all looking at these. Like Wink seems to be the more like Revolve, to use one Revolve type hub that's out there.
Maybe not the best analogy, but
yeah, whoops. But we were all looking at it like, well, Wink would be a great thing to buy, go out and buy because it's so inexpensive and talks to everything. And then all of a sudden they went out of business. So
yeah.
It's good to see that this company is still around, and things will change. We've seen companies come and go. These guys are still kicking, so there must be something to it.
Yeah, I mean, surely they've built up a lot of intellectual property, and if they can just get some some sound footing underneath them and figure out what their real identity is and what their path forward is, then I hope they're successful. I think they've done a decent job at building out a fairly large ecosystem of compatible devices. I know there's a lot of people out there who use them. I think there's a fair amount of trepidation amongst the user base right now, trying to figure out what this acquisition means and if this company is really going to be viable for the long term. But like you said, I hope they are. They really started out as this model that was practically give away the hardware and really try to build out the biggest ecosystem, and who knows what the long-term vision was to be profitable and make money. I think their goal was really just to grow, and who knows, maybe get acquired or something. But it's been an interesting sort of twisting saga for Wink, and I just enjoy watching it and wish them luck. So we'll see how this develops.
Yeah, I think if it was, I don't know, about this time, maybe 2 years ago, I would have wholeheartedly recommended them. I'm almost like, I feel like I'm almost able to recommend buying a Wink again. Like it's right now, I feel like if anybody came to me and said, what product should I get to put into my house, I would say, well, what's your phone? Do you have an Android or do you have iOS? If they had Android, I'd probably say, hey, maybe you should look at the Samsung Smart Things. Like they've got a lot going on for them on the Android side. Samsung's done a lot to integrate, especially into Samsung phones, like a little app that can control home devices. And of course, on iOS, you really don't even need another device. You just need to have HomeKit compatible products. So that being said, like Wink is definitely in for some rough some more rough times ahead of them with those two, big behemoths owning both the devices and the interface. But I think, if you step back and look at it, they're kind of platform agnostic at that point, right? Like you could use an iOS or Android app with the Link Hub, and it would work just fine. So I don't know. I would say it's a pretty good offering still at this point. So I'm almost able to recommend them again. Hopefully they don't got to.
They're still around, which is more than you can say for Revolve, right?
Oh man. Well, Nest is technically still around. The guys that were at Revolve are still with Nest. So
that's
what
fair.
are they doing over there though? I wonder.
That's a very good question. Yeah. Topic for another show.
Maybe we'll have to pick it back up next week.
Yeah, indeed. Let's wrap it up here. I want to thank everybody, as always, who joined us in the live chat room tonight. Really appreciate you tuning in. And for those of you listening in the future, thank you as well for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Once again, if you're interested in supporting our efforts here at the HomeTech Podcast and you're a fan of what we do and you enjoy listening to the show, we'd really appreciate your support. Head on over to HomeTech.fm/support. And again, that's where you can learn about our Patreon program, where you can contribute to our efforts here for as little as $1 a month. So thanks so much for tuning in.
Yep. Thank you very much. And we'll check back with you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Take care, Seth.